All right, let's jump right into it. Thank you, everybody, for attending episode 44, and let's talk recruiting, where our peers in our industry all get together and talk about various recruiting topics that all kind of hit home for all of us. Today's topic is one of those things where we've all heard about, like the silver bullet or the flashy object, and trends that come and go in our industry, everywhere from tools to whole websites I've seen come and go. Today, we're going to talk about recruiting trends that seem to be sticky. And with us today, we have Marvin Smith out of Seattle, Catherine Amato out of Los Angeles, Cabine out of Los Angeles, and Matthew Liptick out of Boston. We got a heavy LA presence as I am out of the LA area too. First time we had this many people out of one spot. But with that said, what we're going to do is just do a round robin here and go through a few topics that each keynote or each panelist has, and we'll go from there. So Marvin, how about we start off with you?
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. One thing as I've gotten older that I've come to appreciate is there's a lot of sayings that have been around for a while, and one of them is the more things change, the more they remain the same. And, I found that true, that in my experience in recruiting, which began in an analog era, and now that that was the pre-internet days for you, those of you that haven't lived that long, and how many things are very much the same. And when we hear a lot about disruption, and we hear about the new technologies and new processes, and certainly a lot of different new tools to take things into account. There's also a way that we can step beyond that disruption and that part of the conversation and look at some things that have been around a long time. I work for Lockheed Martin, and I'm on a team that is charged with thinking differently and learning new ways to do old things. So specifically, I'm involved in talent engagement on a team that builds pipelines of talent for critical skills that Lockheed needs now and in the future. So it's very much an engagement role. It's very much thinking about working with target talent audiences. And at times it feels a little bit more like a marketing role than it does a recruiting role. But when I think about the things that I've learned from the analog era that come into this digital era, I think about the individual and relationships. I learned a long time ago that it's really important to have a relationship with the target audiences. It's really important to keep in touch with those people over time, because people want to be in the know about things. They're really concerned about their profession. They're really concerned about being informed about things that relate to their profession. So it's about providing content that would help those people along the line. So if you look at the digital era, let's say from 2005, the last 15 years or so, we started out with, learning that our job applicants or our target audiences were consumers. They acted just like consumers act in buying something on Amazon or somewhere. Then we learned that we needed to become more personalized. Now, whether that was driven by the preferences and the lists that Amazon and the different technologies provide to us and make suggestions on what we want to buy, but it really became the idea that we needed to be personalized. And I think where we've moved to now is it is really a mandate to be individualized. In other words, when we think about how can I provide value to Mr. X or Miss Y, it's how do we provide content and relevant information for their profession that is personalized and might remember their birthdays or might remember different times that they're more likely to think about their career and think about a job move. So there's a lot of things that are available with the technologies that we have, but it's really taking things that are very familiar to us and doing it in a modern way. I rely heavily on a CRM to do those kind of things, and it allows us to do it at scale, and so we're providing personalization and individual kind of outreach at scale, but we're providing something that's relevant and valuable to people. So I believe that's one of the things that we're going to see remain the same as we are in this current era of the pandemic, and then as we come out of it. I don't think those things are going to change. It's how are we relevant and valuable to people, because it is all about them. Make sense?
Yeah, Martin, when you talk about content, right, in that ongoing basis, so you're talking
Right,
more than just jobs, right? New recs or new jobs postings, right? It's more of
right.
profession.
Absolutely. I think back to the analog era, and there's 4 or 5 things that we used to use, and one of them was, the right job. You've had a conversation with someone and they're a controller or they're in public accounting and they're going to be looking for a controller role, and if a major company has a controller role, they want to hear about it. They want to be tempted. So I think we still provide job content. I think we still provide content that's about us in terms of building our brand and what we're up to as a company. But I think more importantly, it's about our profession at the company and having our subject matter experts talk to them, have webinars, have lunch and learns, have different kinds of things like that, that showcases our talent and subtly says, we got some really smart people working here. So it is a partnership with the tech teams that we're working with or the subject matter experts in those teams. Does that make sense?
Yep. So you're thinking in like content in context, right? So
Right,
control information, your developers get developer information. One of
right.
the go-to pieces of content I used to use if I couldn't get anybody to help create content, it's kind of a moot point here in 2020, but was events. Like if I knew
Mm-hmm.
there's worked at a game, electronic arts for quite some time, huge community in game development. So we would highlight those events, we'd create that presence there. But that's what I always found was a go-to piece of content was industry events and reaching out to people. Did you know? Are you going? Hey, we'll be there, or stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and I stole the idea from EA when I was at Microsoft. And so we would create events rather than, we would always be at the big game shows, but we would create events. We go to Silicon Valley and host an event at a hotel and invite people in to learn about the latest trends that's going on at Microsoft. The most interesting thing I was able to do there was when we brought out the Connect game. It was called Project Natal beforehand. A lot of mystery around, this hands-free, no controller kind of approach to gaming. And I remember one mailing I did, which was to 5,000 people, an email. We had a 92% attendance rate on that video. And we made amazing number of hires just showing off the product, not showing a job. In fact, we didn't even have jobs then. We were still 6 months before jobs, but made amazing we talked to a lot of people and made a lot of hires out of that. In fact, about 200 people in one quarter came from that effort. So it was very interesting.
So you're a big CRM guy, and I always ask you this because I know not everybody gets all the toys to play with. And I'm going to ask the audience a poll about who has a CRM at their company. And I know that it's expanding. There are tools that act like a CRM, which is another good thing. If a company doesn't have a CRM to put these people in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everybody's applicants in the pools. Any thoughts around what you can do if you do not have a CRM?
Well, there's free CRMs, right? So it's, HubSpot has a free CRM. You can use it. It works. They give it away. There's a Dublin-based company that's in recruiting. I've drawn a blank on its name. That has a free CRM for recruiting that you can use. Is it Candidate ID? I think it's called. And check that out because it looks like I've just looked at it. I haven't played with it too much, but it looks like it's a very good thing. And in the old days, we used Excel sheets or, Google Sheets, whatever the spreadsheets to do mail merges in Outlook or whatever you're using. So you can still do that. It's really the iterative engagement, keeping touch with people so that they'll be top of mind when they're ready to make a job change.
Yeah, I've even used, like I know iCIMS you can do it with inside there, Java you can do it in there. If anybody's got the ability to bucket or to categorize, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've used Constant Contact, right? Just as
Mm-hmm.
it's an emailing tool. But if
Right.
you just put in your list like you want, kind of looks like a CRM, and you can make your emails look really nice because it's that marketing piece to it.
I used PC Recruiter for a long time. Even when I was at a big company that shall remain nameless, it allowed, it was a fairly inexpensive tool, but it allowed me to market and keep track of people and set up kind of a nice funnel for information and the engagement process. So that worked pretty well. And I know there's Crelate and a lot of other people that are in that space now that are very reasonably priced kind of products that will be pretty powerful.
Yeah,
The ATS now act like a CRM. The ATS has now started having a built-in CRM piece where they have a nurturing tool that we use called Nurture, NICE, if you want to call it. That's their tool. And it basically acts like a CRM with the marketing campaigns built in. But Taleo has another tool like that. It's some of these bigger ATSs started getting smart about building in a CRM, but still nothing compared to a regular third-party CRM, in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like CRM is going from the name of a tool to more of a philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Or you just use the tools that you got to go into it. But how about DJ or Catherine? Have you guys used any CRMs or type tactics, CRM type tactics?
I've more used a CRM type tactic and keeping engaged with people more from, I'd say, a LinkedIn perspective of people that I've in my LinkedIn network of people that I consistently keep engaged for referrals. That's kind of been my methodology because I haven't been with a company that has had a CRM. So that's what I've used.
DJ?
Echo Catherine. I think there's good value in those CRMs sometimes, and other times it feels a little bit like a hassle to me. I'll be really honest. But yeah, I think there's good pros and cons about both ways. But yeah, I have used it more from the same angle as Catherine.
Yeah. Marvin, let me circle back to you because I know you're big in the pipelining. To me, that's getting back to the contextual content. I would always take a pipeline and define it by two levels. So for example, you'd have your human resources recruiting, human resources HRBP, human resources comp. So I could easily go in and get that context by that definition. So if I wanted to reach out into recruiters, I know exactly those two levels that my contact would go to recruiters. So I did this thing in iCIMS where we'd have those two levels on the rack, and everybody who got invited to an on-site interview over time on all the recs that had those two levels, that's who I would add into that pipeline. So that was my bar to add you into that pipeline was, did you come for an on-site interview? Mm-hmm. They would get more specific contact versus somebody who just applied for that job.
Right.
How did you define out your pipeline?
So we do it, similar. If you think about, 60% of what we're doing is related to engineering in terms of hires. Then we break it down into the functional areas. So like systems engineers have 7 or 8 subcategories in terms, and they'll be from guidance navigational control people to people that have certain kinds of algorithm, almost embedded software kinds of people. So we kind of differentiate that way. So we have smaller segments, and what we try to do, and we're still trying to prove out that thesis, is to use some unique qualities in the newsletter type of information we give to those people. So rather than just, touting ourselves, we try to provide profession-based information to people. And it's really what drives us is what the critical needs are going to be. So if we have, and we're constantly meeting with leaders in our different business areas that are subject matter, around the topics, to keep in touch with what they need. And because we don't work requisitions, we work the skills that we're going to need. So it's a little different approach.
All right, I'm going to try polling here in Zoom, so bear with me. So I'm going to send out a poll here real quick around CRMs. You guys tell me real quick if you see the poll. It should pop up on your screen, right? So I'm going to see this and what we get from there. And while people are answering that poll, it's about CRMs. Do you or do you not have one? Catherine, we're going to jump over to you and go with your item. Or Marvin, were you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Catherine, let's jump over to you.
Sure. So hello, everyone. And Marvin, thank you so much. Loved your input and totally agree with your that recruiting trend that's going on and getting into the individual talent engagement. So anyway, I'm Catherine Amato, and I've been recruiting for over 20 years, and I currently work for Guitar Center and their business solution recruiting manager for their business solutions division, which is AV integration. And one of the recruiting trends that's sticking definitely is the virtual interview. I think with everything going on, people were already starting to do it, but it's definitely here to stay. It's a wonderful tool. And as a lot of people have already discussed in previous panels, a lot of the ATSs have it is not only to use for virtual interviews right now, but also for screening candidates just on a proactive basis for to keep in a pipeline for upcoming potential jobs. And I think it's a wonderful tool to utilize. And I think also for candidates working remote jobs, a lot of jobs is opening up the candidate base for everybody. So it's not just local candidates anymore, it's widening the candidate pool for everybody. I think companies are recognizing that people can work remote and be productive. So definitely the candidates that, oh, interesting. No, okay, so I was reading that. Anyway, so virtual interview is here to stay. One of the other areas that trend that has been going on for a while, and I really love this area, is that the recruiters are no longer order takers. We're not just taking the specifications of a job and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to find. We're questioning everything. And when we get a job description, we're asking the right questions and maybe evolving even the job description. We're partnering with the business, and we're getting involved in asking the questions, knowing more about the business. We're aligning ourselves with the business strategy and partnering and finding solutions in hiring. And maybe even sometimes I know I find myself even creating certain openings and suggestions based on business needs. And I say, hey, I found this candidate and I know you talked about this business need over here, and I think this person can solve that problem. So we're learning about the business more. And from a hiring perspective, we know we are able to say, oh, okay, I found this person or that, and you said this. We're aligning ourselves with the business strategy and knowing what's going on and helping out truly with the business and helping, whether it's generating money or saving or cost savings, finding the candidates that can solve. So really getting involved more from talent acquisition and more engaged just with the business overall. So that's kind of the recruiting trend I see.
So, Catherine, that level of engagement in advisorial position, so right, that comes with time and experience, right, with recruiters and stuff like that. How do we start? Like, I've seen programs where they have that and where they don't. Typically, it's sort of based upon each individual recruiter's skill set and how they're implementing and managing their desk. Right? They're doing those things while others passing resumes, right?
Right.
And this is sort of a tough question that I do not know the answer to, but knowing the abilities or capabilities of a recruiter, how are we kind of in this time where a lot of recruiters are looking for work, right? And hopefully when everything turns back on and it's more of a switch than a slow hill, how are we demonstrating like, hey, this is how I work? I am not that paper processor. This is the strategic role that I play in my recruiter position. Any thoughts on that to make it known your skill level essentially?
I think, are you talking about if someone's out of work?
No,
how
just
do you present that, or if you're working, how do you present this is how I work?
yeah, it's a tough question. I'm probably not explaining it right, but kind of both, right? I look at like different levels of if you're a project manager or
So
go ahead.
if first of all, if you're a working recruiter, the first thing you do when you're working with a hiring manager is from the very beginning, from the intake meeting, you're really listening, you're asking the right questions, and it becomes you get to that level with setting the expectations and the trust and listening. I think really listening from the beginning. And it's the level of the candidates from the very first search you start with the hiring manager, the level of candidates you're presenting, how you're presenting, and again, it's listening and asking the right questions, learning your business acumen and from the very beginning. So you get to that level by educating yourself on the business, first of all, and asking the right questions with the hiring managers and developing the relationships with the different people in the business and learning the business. So you can't get that place overnight and by saying, oh, I'm this great recruiter and I can do this and this and this and this. It's not all about talking. It's about doing your due diligence and learning the business and demonstrating that you can listen, you can ask the right questions to learn the business. And again, when you get a job description, you kind of study it and learn about the hiring manager, the department. How does the department fit into the organization? How does the organization solve the problems or fit into the organization as a whole? So you have to really learn the organization and learning your mind, where does this fit into the piece? How does it contribute to the organization from a financial standpoint or cost savings or organization? How does it save money, make money? Or you have to learn all the aspects of the business. And then you start there,
Right. So here's like a real world dilemma that I hear too. And I'm with you on all that, Catherine. It's about, hey, it's a trend that I think all good recruiters, experienced recruiters agree to. Hey, don't be the resume baton passing, be that consultative approach. And I think that's a trend that we all want to get to, stick to. But I'm trying to, here's my scenario that I hit, and this is for all panelists. So when I'm talking to somebody new that I just met, they'll say something like, well, what do you do? And I say, oh, I work in recruiting. And then basically I start to hear their horror stories of dealing with the recruiter. And I hear it too often. And I'm like, well, there's some, you may have, I'll say something like, oh, was it from an agency? Usually a lot of people start off in recruiting, they even knew, oh no, it was this company. And then I had the same experience at company number 2. I was like, so with this bar, what I'm trying to get to, and again, don't know the answer to, is I always look at the captain of the ship. right? Whoever the captain of the ship is on the team, that's kind of where the ship steers.
Mhm.
And I've run across some great captains, and you can see they set that tone. So I guess I'm trying to look for ways where as we all kind of start to hopefully come back to work soon or what have you, knowing which companies are that way. I mean, where they're setting the tone, this is how we work here, great, because I work that way too, versus our bar is down here versus up here. I need somebody new because I don't have much headcount. I'll take a hit on the teeth in candidate experience because I got young recruiters that are just processing. So, and I don't know how to phrase the question, but just any thoughts around, hey, this is the bar that everybody wants to get to. How do we know if we're there?
You can get there in a lot of ways by actually making real impact and seeing that impact happen with your managers or with the team that you specifically recruit for. I think that it goes well beyond just giving them a good candidate. I think if you can teach and train them about interviewing and how to do that better, how to maximize their ability to ask good questions to get to the meat and the heart of what they really need out of candidates in that process. I think if you can help them streamline that process to ensure that they're not wasting their time or their team's time as they interview people, I think it goes beyond just the actual candidate you're giving to them. So I think if you can help them and come in and talk about the structure of their team, what gaps are they missing in terms of skills? How do you add, maybe this profile to your team to create a more well-rounded, grouping of individuals that you have that can now meet greater demand or do better with the goals that you have set out. I think if you can approach it from that angle, and instead of just saying, hey, I'm giving you this really amazing candidate resume, here, you do this, right? Take it to the next step and really coach them and give them good information on what helps make them a better hiring manager and through that hiring process as well. And I think over time, if you continually do that and you continually work with your teams on those types of things, you're absolutely going to see that change. And I think you're going to get their respect and you're going to earn their trust in a whole lot of different ways than you may have really set out to do from the onset if you just give them great candidates.
I think the way I train the recruiting teams that I lead is that you step outside the transactional regular process that you're used to with just shuffling paper over to the hiring managers, and you become that true strategist, that true partner to the hiring manager, where you're able to actually guide the recruiting process in a way where you're, just as DJ mentioned, coaching that hiring manager to actually recommend candidates to them. And when you get to a point where the hiring manager, that you're able to say, you know what, I feel like you should hire this individual and this is why. And you should probably put these others to the side. When you get that respect and that trust from the hiring manager, where you're able to give that guidance, that's when you become the true partner to that hiring manager. That's when you're less transactional.
And I also get involved in the business in putting together different guiding tools and processes and different things like that. So I partner with my boss and making sure I'm in the guidelines of the company and that type of thing. But I put together different tools to help the hiring manager and their team members that get involved and make sure there's not too many people that are involved in the hiring process, and it goes the whole workflow. And just to help make sure that there's not too many things that bog down the process, and there's a lot involved, but you really become that true partner involved in all the different aspects and helping helping the areas that may have little kinks in it. And, it's the whole gamut of everything. So.
Marvin, you're on mute.
He's like,
There you go. Oh, now you're on mute.
Some people prefer me on mute. So one thing that I think it dawned on me at one point that, we have two different customers in a way that we serve as recruiters or sourcers. And one customer, of course, is our potential candidate, and the other is our hiring manager. And what makes them a little different is the candidate is more like a consumer, And so it's a business to consumer kind of relationship. And then on the other hand, the hiring manager is more like a B2B kind of relationship, a business to business. And so when you think about it in marketing terms, you know, a lot of what's been said here is we bring, you know, we go to this meeting with data, we go with talent intelligence, we go with the idea of a partnership, and we're trying to find their need and help them solve it. And we're going to explore, you know, what they do now and the makeup of the team and all the things. DJ, I think, made a great point on that, and how we can impact them. And so I've found good success in doing that, you know, just thinking about, okay, if it's another business that we're marketing to, what do they need to make that decision? Because it, you know, a lot of times I'm working with engineers, and it's, you know, engineers are people that are paid to fail. You know, they're paid to test the bounds of everything. And yet they don't want us in recruiting to be a failure. They demand success. If you want to drive an engineer crazy, put an error on a PowerPoint slide, and 5 slides later, they're still fussing about the mistake that's on the slide. So, you know, I think it's part of it is we can think about it that way and help us plan how we reach out to them.
All right. I apologize for such a vague, great question, but it's something I'm just trying to figure out as we go here. Catherine, I didn't mean to paint you in a corner there, a red corner in your red room.
I'm good.
All right. All right. Hey, DJ, let's jump over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm DJ Kameen. I'm a senior recruiter with Amazon. I work with our global corporate affairs group and strictly recruit for PR people for the Americas for Amazon. So one thing that I wanted to talk about was D&I and you know, just that growing trend and emphasis there. I think as we continue to do hiring, it's really important to bring in a lot of diverse ideas and mindsets, angles, backgrounds, everything that we can. And so you're going to see a lot more of that. I think we're seeing a lot of it already. I think some of the ways that you can really maximize how you're doing that is to promote, you know, a lot of what your brand and your culture is about. Promote those internal groups that you do have, if you have them, that relate to specific, you know, individuals. We call them affinity groups at Amazon. And so there's a wide variety of them. I think that there are obviously some really interesting things that you can do as a recruiter that you can help your hiring managers do around, you know, things like unconscious bias. There's a lot to study up on that online. So a quick Google search will get you a lot of great information on what unconscious bias is and how that works. I think it's great and important to offer trainings for your recruiters, for HR, for interviewers, for hiring managers on what that is, on what the importance of D&I is and how that really impacts organizations, and find some great statistics that can back you up on that. I think if you can put mechanisms in place to remove unconscious bias, that's also super helpful. I know that's really tough sometimes, but there are some tools that are out there that you can remove, you know, names and all kinds of really information like that would allow for that to come into place. And so I think there's some great things there that you can do. In terms of process and how you can really impact your process with D&I and what you can do there. I think if you can just ensure that there are diverse candidates in your pipeline. One thing that we're doing and really putting an emphasis on at Amazon is ensuring that we have diverse candidates in our pipeline and in our process before we actually extend an offer. We want to make sure that we are really, really, truly, you know, indexing heavily on that to ensure that we are putting a wide variety of candidates in front of hiring managers before an offer is extended, and meeting that goal before we actually do extend an offer. I think there's really some good stuff to be said just about setting aside really good time to source for diverse candidates. And really making that an emphasis in your own daily or weekly sourcing time or recruiting time that you're doing. I think if you can create engagement opportunities for diverse candidates, that would be great. Right now, obviously, cyber events are really cool. Maybe they don't even have to be around recruiting. Maybe they just are around, here's our company, get to know our company, but really target it to those diverse audiences that you might be looking for. And just give them opportunities to learn more about your company. Something that we do that I think is really, really cool is we offer opportunities for for candidates moving through a process to talk to someone from one of our affinity groups. So maybe that's our Black Employee Network, maybe that's our LGBTQIA plus network, Glamazon. There's a lot of them, right? So there are opportunities that we give candidates moving through a process to also speak with a member of those affinity groups to help them understand just what that diversity and inclusion looks like here at Amazon, that I think is really, really nice and important for candidate process as well.
Hey, DJ, around the affinity groups. So I've seen a couple companies have those, usually your larger sized groups. Uh, are your affinity groups just for internal employees, or can external people join them?
Yeah, they are just for internal employees right now.
Okay. And let me ask you this, around D&I, you think we're kind of in the infant stage as far as developing long-term programs?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think that there's been some effort on it, but I do think that yes, in terms of the, for the long term, yeah, I think that there's a lot of work that can be done, a lot of tailoring and tweaking and just learning and development that needs to be done just around sensitivity and, just everything that goes along with that. Obviously, there's a lot going on in our world right now that's, I think, pushing that in a lot of the way that we're going. But, I think that there's a lot of room to grow for sure.
Yeah, this is just my personal feelings. I agree. I think we're in the infancy stage, but I think it's alive and growing now, where before it may have just been talk. Some companies are doing something, but now I think a lot of companies are doing it. You're starting to see the D&I profession. Just watching people have D&I on their LinkedIn profile title. To me, I had an interesting discussion with a VP of TA who was talking about what problem are we trying to solve, and he gave an example of, if I recruit a diverse developer out of one of my competitors, I'm increasing that diversity at my company because that's my job, to recruit people into my company. But am I doing anything for the greater good? Because now they just decreased their diversity while I increased mine, which is a good recruiter. Find those talent, get them over to your place. So the reason I was asking about the affinity, who's it's open to, I think we'll take a really big jump when companies together in some way, shape, or form, I have no idea what this is, work to increase the talent pool and to increase the greater good. Because I've been in situations before where recruiters are like, hey, you give me diverse talent, then I'll recruit them. Where are they? Right? And that's just an honest response. There's only so many female software engineers in a specific location. It's like, give me more talent and I will be happy to recruit. That's like a real world challenge back.
Definitely involved in communities. They do a lot outside of the company. So it's not just for internal purposes only. There is a lot of impact that we do and make, I think, in localized communities, not just nationally, but in localized communities, since we do have presence in a lot of places. There are individual groups in those locations that really do go.
I think you're hitting on something I think is going to be very important, is we're going to see a rise of talent communities that are comprised of both external and internal talent. At Lockheed, we created a veterans community about 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and we've had over 20,000 people in that community, and it's really an opportunity for our folks to teach them how to get a job. It's not about a job at Lockheed, it's about a job, and Amazon has just been outstanding at veteran talent as well, and we found that to be very useful. It creates a long-term relationship with these folks. The first 60 to 90 days, it's really important to give them the skills that they need to create to work in this new world. But I see that happening in D&I in particular. There's just a lot of opportunities for that. So we have to sort of rethink what we call a talent community. It's not a database that we slam with emails. It's really about creating relationships where you can grow that whole conversation. And I think with the things that were going on right now and the conversations that are happening around diversity and inclusion and social justice, things are going to happen that way naturally. It's just going to be an offshoot of what we're doing.
Catherine, Matt, anything to add to D&I?
I think that we've done a good job here at my company. We just recently hired a D&I manager, and she's actually doing a good job of putting initiatives in place and helping us on the recruitment side become more aware. But as well, leading the team, I've always taught the recruiters on this team to go into these intake meetings with D&I on your mind and talk those conversations through with the hiring managers, first and foremost, about the strategy for D&I going into the recruitment cycle. What are they going to do from an interview perspective on their panel? What are they going to do to have diversity, a little bit of mixing up on their team and making sure they pay attention to the makeup of that team that the hiring manager is in charge of currently, and to make sure that they fill the pool up with candidates that are a good, a mix of candidates from that D&I perspective. So they give the hiring manager the opportunity to look at those candidates, to have the opportunity to evaluate the candidates. And then at the end of that cycle, like DJ said, we ask the questions. What happened with the diversity candidates that I put through this cycle? Why didn't they get through the process? What were the reasons? Try to find out and analyze what was the occurrence during that interview process if the D&I candidates were not successful. So I mean, you really have to ask those questions and really have to look at the process and put something in place for that.
Yeah.
I think that circles back to a lot of what the strategy and being more of a talent partner that Catherine was talking about earlier as well. I think if you can make an impact in that respect as well.
Yeah. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is extremely important to our organization, and we're in the process right now of looking for a head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at our organization, and looking at not only to fill that position, but how are we going to track that? How are we going to be accountable? And it's something that the recruiters that we've been looking at and recruiting for a long time. It's one of our key strategies in our organization. So we're looking at how are we going to be accountable and what kind of things we're going to put in place to be successful. So it's one of the things we're working to be, I think, better at and more accountable for. So
yeah, I think one measuring thing to do, like I was talking to another staffing leader, they implemented Slack, and the reason why they implemented Slack is too many developers were declining them because they didn't have Slack. So they would ask, do you use Slack tool? No, I'm not interested. So they're getting declined by that. So they went out and implemented Slack. I think we'll get to the point where people start to ask about D&I at your company, and if you're not able to give those responses back, they may not have interest in your company. So I would always encourage people when you're doing real sourcing and recruiting, you're doing outbound recruiting, and people are declining you on the call, it would have you to track those declines. And if you're getting to that point where D&I is an issue, that's excellent ammunition to go get change, whether it's budget or what have you. Tracking people who say no because has always been a great way to get budget, to be honest. All right, I'm going to put another poll in here about D&I. There goes that. And while we're doing that, Matt, we're going to jump over to you and your item.
Just being conscious of time, I just want to quickly put it out there. My name is Matt Liptak. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Mimecast here in Boston. We're an email security company, a global company. And one of the, there's two areas that I think is sticking around, and whether people like it or not, social media and social networking is not going anywhere anytime soon, whether people love it or hate it. I currently use social networking at my company and have used it for a number of years in many different capacities, and have implemented on the teams that I've led, and to make sure that all the recruiters are becoming daily users of social media to put job adverts out there, to put culture stories about the company out there, to put news and press pieces out there about the company, and to just tell the story of the employer that we're working for. and also the employer brand tying into this. That's another area that I think is going to be a big piece that isn't going away anytime soon. The employer brand tying into social networking, social media, the EVP, the employer value proposition. Why would someone want to work for our company? You know, getting that story out there, telling the story and branding the company in the appropriate way to make sure that people are attracted to the company, and, you know, pushing those pieces out there with social media hand in hand. I think, you know, we use all sorts of portals for social media here. Twitter, we're using LinkedIn, of course. We're using Instagram, Facebook at times. You know, obviously the company has a Facebook profile. We're not putting particular job adverts out on Facebook, but stories and culture pieces and things like that to attract people to the company. Glassdoor is another one that we are utilizing for things like that. And then we also tie in community type of organizations for the employer brand. You know, organizations that tie into tech communities within the city that we're in. We're Boston, big tech community. We have a number of different organizations that help us brand the company, technology leadership councils, things like that. They're putting stories and pieces about our engineering department, about our marketing department, about who we are as an employer. I think those are big pieces to keep in mind and make sure that they're important on your teams.
Now, Matt, do you have like a social media for your marketing department in regards to your company's product and services, and then a separate careers social media accounts?
Yeah, so what that's a good question. The marketing department, we recently rebranded the company, and they do concentrate a lot of the company social media on the products and, you know, the products that we have and the email security that we provide. However, we're going to be separating that out with a new branding for just the employer side. So we're going to have a career site detached from the company website. We're going to have our own social media accounts for careers, things like that. So yeah, that's a good question. I believe in that. I think that's an important piece that should happen, but not a lot of companies I've worked for have done that. We've always tied social media into the company's social media portals, which mixes up the product and the employer value proposition.
Now, do you have once you get the fully implemented careers piece of it, do you have a gatekeeper, or can any of the recruiters go in and post?
It's a good question as well. Now, what we've gotten in good practice of is globally, we've recruiters obviously spread out throughout the globe, and we're trying to time it, and we're trying to look at who's posting what, and we're trying to make sure that we're posting the right appropriate content. So there is a social media person or a champion in each region that we're appointing, and that person will post for those regions, stories and culture pieces for that particular region. And then we'll have a main social media person or a marketer on the TA team that will actually be in charge of funneling some of that to the teams as well.
DJ at Amazon, how do you guys do it at Amazon, being as big as you are?
There's not actually a specific channel that I know of just for recruiting. There's way too many recruiters to try to manage that from the angle that Matt is doing. That would be impossible. So, you know, what happens is a lot of times our normal channels will pick it up, pick up certain jobs or certain topics, and it all gets posted through those normal channels. Or our overarching brand channels, I should say.
All right. Marvin, you get any freelancing abilities at Lockheed?
Freelancing?
Yeah.
It's controlled freelancing. So we have we don't have a marketing department per se. We really have a communications department, and they manage our social channels, and they give us content that other recruiters, for example, have suggested. You know, it might come from the Muse or someplace like that, someplace that's, you know, a proven source to us. And so we're allowed to and encouraged to push that information out to our social channels. So for Twitter and for Instagram and for Facebook and for LinkedIn, we have maybe 30 or 40 different ideas, articles, and so forth that can be used for that. So a lot of it is, you know, just talking about an award that we won or something like that. The ones that do best, honestly, are the employee stories.
Mhm.
You know, people want to know what it's like to work at Lockheed, and the closer you get to telling people what it's really like, the real job, you know, that does better. But it's very organized.
Has anybody ever seen, I haven't seen it, kind of a character driven, kind of to your point, Marvin, like a person in the engineering, let's just say,
Mm-hmm.
who's got some charisma and doesn't like social media, to kind of let them tell the story over time, where they're kind of the character in the story, where you're posting multiple postings over a period of time? This goes back to my belief that they should make a sitcom on recruiting, because there's just stories you can always tell. There's characters.
But you're in LA, go do it.
Well,
Reality show.
Netflix is always looking for
Sounds like
content.
a new reality show in the works.
Or Amazon, better yet, is looking for content, right? Prime.
so that's a double-edged sword, Marvin. Being in the entertainment world, they all want control of that messaging and entertainment because they're all in that business. So it's like a double-edged sword on that regard. But that's what I was asking about separate pieces in marketing. Catherine, kind of akin to your industry, where I was just at Universal Music, we started building a good recruiting presence around social media. And then because the music business is so brand driven, now you got the attention of the marketing. So now there's a partnership, and you got to walk that line and work together in a way that when you're under the radar, you didn't have before. In the music, your recruiting branding crosses into the music branding, because it's great to have artists in your post because that gets the most attention. So those are our characters. We're like highlighting the artists in the group, and that got great responses and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We do partner with marketing a lot, and marketing does a really great job on LinkedIn and creating different marketing materials and branding. So we're getting together with them more on creating a kind of recruiting branding thing. So we're starting to partner with them more on that. And we wanted to create something that is employee stories. And we do have employee stories. So I'm trying to get those out there. And I know that we're creating a new careers page, and those are going to be on those.
To kind of circle back to DJ's topic, now once you introduce D&I, well, is that for internal? Is that for external recruiting? Is that the company story? Is that the recruiting story? I mean, we could all figure it out and stuff like that, but it's you get these pieces of streaming pieces of content coming in to organize to the greater good or what have you. All right, I'm going to ask another quick poll. I'm starting to really like these polls. So this is around kind of my question. Do you have a separate career site dedicated to it? I've watched YouTubers, and the secret to YouTubers to get that consistent or that flow of audience seems to be they always say, keep uploading, consistency. So that's where I was kind of getting back to telling a story and a character story. And imagine if, like with SpaceX, if I know you can't release private information, but if you recorded an engineer with SpaceX who is helping build their latest rocket, and then they have success, and then you go back, kind of like how documentaries are made, right? They film it all, and they go back and edit it and then tell the story. Having those pieces of here's how this happened over the last 3 months, and it ended in success so the company can talk about it. That type of character-driven recruiting, I always thought would be really interesting. Haven't seen it. I've seen some companies sort of highlight employees, but then it gets kind of goofy and it doesn't bring me back. I sort of an oddball one-off. There's no ongoing story to be told that I see. But
so one thing people forget about social media is that you have to be doing it daily. I mean, it's with Twitter, it's a daily thing. I mean, it's the grind of social media. You got to get the stories out there. You got to do stuff. If you're letting it die off and not telling a story, and it's like a month period of time before anyone ever hears about your company, the followers are wondering what's going on. I mean, there's thousands of followers following these companies on social media. Why not get stories out there about what's going on at the company?
yeah. Excellent. I know we went way over. My apologies. Good conversation though. Any final comments to trends and sort of our industry as a whole? I know we see a lot of shiny objects come and go.
I was surprised at the lack of CRM across the board, just on the poll, and secondly, the last one on social media, I was a little surprised at those numbers as well. It's interesting.
I'll add something on the CRM. I think it's the ability, the knowledge on how to use the tools. I think that's really what it comes down to. I don't think vendors do a good enough job teaching their users how to use their products. And it's not doing a one-time training session and leaving. It's ongoing support. That's my belief around there, around CRMs. I just don't think people quite get how to do it. Anything else? Any final comments?
Nope. I got to jump off for a meeting, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.